Released in 1999, just a few months after the legendary filmmaker's death, Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut, divided film critics and fans alike on the time of its release. Initially snubbed as a run-of-the-mill erotic thriller at the time of its release, over the last 10 years the film has slowly gained more momentum, and is now studied and looked at as much as Kubrick's other classic works such as The Shining and 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Over the years, Eyes Wide Shut has become a very personal film to me. And I'd like to just throw my hat into the ring and give my personal review of a legendary filmmaker's final film. Seeing the film at the cinema at a young age was quite mind-blowing, as it was like nothing at that time that I'd ever seen before. The film was a modern movie, but firmly had its footing in the thriller and film noir genre, which had been Kubrick's first foray into making movies, so it seemed quite fitting that he would return to this genre at the end of his career. Some of the lighting is very similar to film noir, with its stark lighting coming through blinds. The chase sequence, when Bill finds himself being followed, is right out of a film noir, as is Bill's emotional and physical decline throughout the narrative of the film. There is also the film noir trope of peeling back the surface and finding the dark underbelly underneath. The film seems to say it's all about greed and lust for the upper classes. I was young the first time I saw the movie, so I don't think I was quite prepared yet to give the film an emotional viewing. So the first time I saw it, I was concentrating more on the technical side. I think Kubrick was showing us the difference between people in society using the lavish sets that are very reminiscent of old Hollywood, like something out the Magnificent Ambersons. But he also chose to use an old Hollywood technique with the rear screen projection, which is used when Bill's character is walking down the street in New York. Now you could say that this technique was used because Kubrick didn't like to travel anymore, and it was just out of necessity because they couldn't shoot in New York. But I think it was a stylistic choice on Kubrick's part, because it helps to show us thematically what's going on in Bill's head. The backdrop almost looks like a dream. It's like he's detached from his surroundings. It could also suggest that all this is happening in Bill's head. But as an audience, we are seeing the story, at least this part of the story, through Bill's eyes. I do think that everything that happens to Bill on his night out is happening for real. But I think it's Bill's over-dramatized sense of everything that we are seeing because of his messed up state of mind. So we, the audience, are left to think like Bill. Is this all for real? Is Bill really caught up in the murder mystery? Is this a dream? Or is the entire film in Bill's head? After reading the source novel just after my first viewing of the film, Dream Story by Arthur Schnitzler, I had the realization this perhaps could all be a game. Similar to Connell's The Most Dangerous Game, in that the protagonist of that story is a hunter who believes himself to be pretty high up on the food chain, but later on finds himself pursued by aristocrats from the upper class, and soon finds himself being the hunted. Just like Bill in Eyes Wide Shut. He thinks he's in control of his destiny, but he's not. He's at the whim of the upper classes. He's being laughed at. He thinks he is important in society, but he is not. It could be something, because it's mentioned in the original source material too in the novel. The character's internal dialogue actually thinks, these people are playing a trick on me. They're trying to get one over on us. So that could have been brought across from the novel. But in my opinion, it's more about Bill's emotional turmoil, and about how this thing his wife tells him affects him and just knocks him off his feet. So those are a few of the initial thoughts I had after my first viewing as a young man of Eyes Wide Shut. But of course, as Jan Harlan, Kubrick's friend and producer, says, Eyes Wide Shut is a film that needs 2 viewings. It was years before I would see the film again. But when I did, I was in a totally different headspace than I had been before. I'd been in relationships, I'd been engaged, I'd had a lot more friendships, and I had a much deeper understanding of how people work and what people's internal motivations are and how they can manipulate people to get what they are asking for. But most importantly, I had been the Bill character. Sure, I'm not a well-to-do doctor, but emotionally, I had been where Bill was. When Alice tells Bill she has fantasies about sleeping with other men, it knocks Bill off his feet, and he goes for a walk in the city. This is where those artificial backdrops come into play again. They are accentuating Bill's state of mind. He's in a mess. For the first time in a long time, someone has made him realize perhaps he's not who he thinks he is, and he's not the confident and righteous man that he believes himself to be. Because when Alice tells him she has fantasies about sleeping with other men, he knows internally that he's guilty of the same thing too. He has fantasies about sleeping with other women. And when Bill sets out on his walk through the city, it's a walk of revenge. He's going to get revenge on his wife for having these fantasies, even though he has these fantasies too. Now it's Bill's walk that sets off the chain of events, which in my opinion will change Bill and change who he is. It's a little bit like Dante's Inferno. Bill goes through different levels, tests if you will, of him and who he is. And through these tests, he begins to realize he's not who he thought he was. And it turns out in the end, Bill is kind of a much better man than he believed he was in the first place. Bill has 4 chances to cheat on his wife and get revenge, but he doesn't do it. Watching Eyes Wide Shut, we have to realize that it's a film about the sexual jealousy of the mind. And not really about sexual affairs in actuality. It's about how when we're in a relationship with somebody, we can manipulate jealousy and use it to hurt one another, and about knowing how to push each other's buttons. In essence, a film about our emotional frailty, and asks its audience to look at human beings as fundamentally good or evil. One of the things we have to remember about Eyes Wide Shut is that Bill and Alice have got everything. And the emotions that they go through in the film are totally brought on by themselves. It's a form of emotional torture. And a film about the games we play with one another. Bill spirals down through these different levels. The first level, he could sleep with another version of his wife, but he chooses not to. The second level, he could sleep with a prostitute, but Bill chooses not to. Bill could get away with this and use his wealth and position to get revenge on his wife, but he doesn't. And it's important that Bill is rewarded for this decision later on. He finds out later that the prostitute is HIV positive. So Bill escaped that situation because he was a good man and he chose not to sleep with that prostitute. And then Bill meets his old friend Nightingale. Now maybe this is just a coincidence, but I always thought that Nightingale looked a little bit like a dark magician with that goatee beard and his crystal ball. Kind of like the boatman to the forbidden place. He is offering Bill everything and tempting him to give in to his lust and greed. Or perhaps more like a fortune teller, showing Bill, if he follows the path he is on, what his possible future could be. Asking Bill to follow him down. And I couldn't help but think, with that lighting and that goatee beard, he looks a little bit like the depiction of the Dark One in some of the old artworks. Just a little fun observation I thought I'd put in there to think about. And then, eventually, Bill gets to the last level, which is the debaucherous mansion scene, where literally all he has to do is take off his robe and join in. With a mask, he has total anonymity, and he will be what he wants to be. We know from the beginning of the story, and the party that Bill goes to with his wife at Ziegler's house, that he's a bit of a social climber. It's like Ziegler is what Bill aspires to be. But then when Bill gets to this final level at the mansion, he realizes, this isn't what I want to be at all. He doesn't take his robe off and join in. He walks around in disbelief because he can't believe that this is what he aspired to be. And all through the evening, he's been thinking about what he wants. The cult represents the evil side of everybody. Bill could give in to his evil side and become one of the cult members, but he doesn't. He chooses not to, and this is really important. This is where I totally relate to Bill again. I've been that guy out walking well past midnight, looking for a drink and reevaluating his life, wanting something else to happen. It's like at that final level at the mansion, Bill is being offered everything. He's being offered that bite of the forbidden apple, but he chooses not to take it. And when he's ejected from the party, he's being laughed at from who he wanted to be. He's being laughed at by these upper classes. Ziegler actually says later on, as I mentioned earlier, that Bill could just be part of a big game. And this affects Bill. Bill realizes he's not who he thought he was. He doesn't want to be this social climber. He doesn't want to end up being one of those emotionless, faceless people at the mansion. He wants his life back. He wants his wife back, and he wants his family back. And then, leaving the cult, Bill starts his journey back to where he wants to be, back to his life. When Bill eventually does get back to Alice and his normal life, he breaks down. He sees the mask lying there on the pillow. And to me, this is Alice showing him that she's not the only one that's two-faced. She has fantasies about sleeping with other people, but so does Bill. In essence, Bill is two-faced, just like Alice. So for this viewing of Eyes Wide Shut, this begins to be my preferred reading. But as I say, I've seen the film a few times now, and each time something different happens, and the film can be about something else. But I'm looking at the film through Bill's eyes, and this seems to be what it means. So if we take that point of view, we're looking at it through Bill's eyes, we can then look back over some of the events that have happened in the film and try to explain them a little bit better. For example, the disappearance of one girl and the death of another. So the girl that Bill sees in the morgue may or may not be the girl from the party who saves his life. But what that girl represents, whether it's her or not, to me in this preferred viewing, is the death of Bill's dream. The girl that Bill helps to save at Ziegler's party is a very important part of the story, because Bill is rewarded once again for being a good man. So if the girl does sacrifice herself because Bill saved her at Ziegler's party in the opening, then he's being saved by his own good deed. I think that's an interesting point, and it's one that I'd like to make. But in this reading, for me, it doesn't matter who the girl is, because the girl is a representation of something that's happening to Bill. It's a representation of the death of his dream and his realization of who he is and who he wants to be. Bill is realizing he's not going after that girl at the party. He doesn't want that faceless girl. He wants to go back to Alice. Looking through Bill's eyes again, we can then start to examine the shopkeeper from Rainbow Fashions. The guy at first is disgusted by the fact that his daughter is prostituting herself out to these two well-to-do men. But then that character makes a change. When Bill goes back, the character has totally done a 180 and is accepting the fact that his daughter is prostituting herself, and is even sharing a little in the profits. Now Bill seems to be a little bit disgusted at this, because Bill's had a realization. He's realized he's not all about lust. He's not all about greed. But that's what the shopkeeper is about. Someone's offered him money, someone's offered him perhaps favors from these upper-class, well-to-do gentlemen who are with his daughter. So that guy has gone the evil route. Bill's chosen not to do that. And I think that's what the shopkeeper in this reading represents. He represents a mirror image to Bill. Someone who is jumping onto that social ladder by offering his daughter. He represents Bill realizing, I could never be that man. I could never be that guy who would sacrifice his own daughter. And of course, in this reading, more importantly, looking at possible doppelgangers for Bill, you must look at Ziegler. Ziegler is someone that Bill looks up to and aspires to be, but throughout the course of the film discovers, this is not who I want to be at all. I want to be my own man. I want to be somebody different. I don't want to be someone who gives in to lust and to greed. Bill also learns about sex and what it can mean to other people. For example, for the prostitute, it means a job and education. For the cult, sex is about power, lust and money, and showing that they can hide secrets from normal people. And at the end of the movie, when Bill is standing in the toy store with Alice, and when she says we need to go home and sleep together as soon as possible, it's like sex is the confirmation of their love for each other in that moment. And that's the scary thing about Eyes Wide Shut. It ends like real life. It ends on an uncertain note. Alice says to Bill, I've forgiven you this time, and I love you for this moment. I love you for this moment. She even turns around and says to him that she doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. So we're kind of left hanging on that cliff edge. It's a movie about what we're thinking inside, and how we never know what the other person in a relationship is thinking. But like I say, this is just my preferred rating of Eyes Wide Shut this time. That's what's so beautiful about this movie. I might watch it again and have a totally different rating, but this is what it means to me at the moment. I'm looking at the film through Bill's eyes, because I've been where Bill's been. I've been in that situation where somebody's punched me in the guts, pulled my heart out, and said, you're going to have to reevaluate yourself. This is not who you are. This is not your comfortable life. And I think that's what Kubrick was going for. He was going for something in this movie that would show us those emotions, that show us that human emotions are fragile, but from an in-depth point of view. Bill's character gets really ashamed throughout the course of the movie. He's ashamed of who he is, but realizes, I'm going to start a new road. I'm going to be who I want to be. But it takes him to get shamed by the society that he wants to be part of to get onto that road. So every now and again, we all need to be shook up in our lives and realize what's going on around us. Bill has to give more to Alice if she's going to stick around. It's not just a physical thing. Bill has to give her his emotional side as well. He has to give her much more. Because like the characters say to each other in the end of the movie, no truth is ever a truth. And if you want it to be, no dream is ever just a dream. You can make anything happen if you just go out there and get it. When you're in a relationship with somebody, we set boundaries. And sometimes we have to operate within those boundaries. Because if you tell something to the other person that they don't really want to know, it can destroy them. Eyes Wide Shut is now classed as a modern masterpiece. And this re-evaluation of the film over the last few years has really shown that it's a film that people want to go back to, and perhaps it isn't just the tame, erotic thriller that it was thought to be when it was released in 1999. This is just one way of looking at Eyes Wide Shut. There are many other analyses out there where people look at the cult in depth, where people look at the daughter in depth, where people look at Alice in depth. But for this reading, I found that I was emotionally tied with Bill's character, and that was my endpoint to the movie. Eyes Wide Shut is a great film, and who knows what we'll see in it next time we watch it. The Arthur Schnitzler novel is a great companion piece to the movie as well, because there are some scenes which are lifted from the novel verbatim that Kubrick put in the movie, so it was obviously a very passionate story for him too. Eyes Wide Shut is just an exploration of what it means to be us, and like all good art, has many interpretations. It's one of those films I love because everybody has a different explanation of what it means to them. Thanks for listening to mine, and this has been my personal review of Stanley Kubrick's final film, Eyes Wide Shut.